Bonjour, life sparklers. It's Claire. Welcome and thanks for listening to the Integrally Life podcast, where we explore stories, wisdoms, and tools for growing resilience and living life in your own terms. My guest today is on a mission to democratize co-living and turn it into a global movement. After running 4 co-living spaces, he decided to spread the awareness around co-living and empowering others to create their own spaces. He currently also hosts Evolve Coliving. You can find it on evolvecoliving.com. And it is a communal co-living space in Bali dedicated to personal growth and transformation. And I know you have plans to move it further than Bali as well. But we'll talk about this later. Without further ado, please welcome Guillaume Perdrix. Hello, Guillaume.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for warm welcoming.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on board today. And this, guys, is going to be a 2-episode interviews. This is a new format I'm trying. And let me know your feedbacks on this format. So today, next week, we'll learn what this Evolve Co-Living project of yours all about. And I love the way you see co-living and the take on putting people first. Just love it. Can't wait to hear all of this next week. But for today, we're going to discover Guillaume's story of resilience and the why behind all of this. So for this episode, I have pretty much one question. How did you grow resilience in your life? I mean, you're having a great life. You're doing what you love with people you love. I guess it wasn't always that way. So how did you get there? What was the starting point?
Thank you. Cool. Well, that's a big question. And so my intention right now is I'm going to be very vulnerable and start tracing I never actually asked myself the question of resilience. Because I think resilience was a trait that was in my life, but never thought about, am I resilient right now? Or am I not? So it's actually interesting to ask myself right now the question, how did I build up resilience? And especially resilience against what? So I guess, quickly about my background, right?
Yeah.
I have French parents, grew up in Germany, next to Frankfurt in Darmstadt. It's like a smaller town, 130,000 people. Had a really good childhood. My parents were well off. I went to school. My mom taught me French. I was the first kid. My dad brought me to swimming pools every Sunday. I really can't complain about anything. One thing that I realized when I was 13, I was a teen, and I went through this whole thing of being a bit frustrated, but I guess it's also normal. At the time I was a hip hopper, and I was letting out my frustration this way. And then the thing that really marked me was when I was 14, I moved to Peru for 3 months. And that was the first time that I was around a community, a real community of people. Peruvians, Latin Americans, are so different than people in Germany. So I grew up in an environment that's very cold.
I can believe that. Yes.
Yeah, it's not like France. It's especially the place where I was growing up. For example, the neighbors of my parents' home in the last 10 years never invited us, since we opened the house. While we did barbecue parties, and we were the Frenchmen, inviting out. So growing up, I didn't have a lot of sense of community. And when I went to Peru, and then everybody welcomed me, and I suddenly made really warm-hearted friends. I brought it back to Germany, and I really missed it. And I knew I'm gonna move away. I knew that the day I finish my studies, or my high school, when I'm 18, I'm gonna move away. And I tried to, so I was missing this human connection. And actually, now that I'm saying it, I realized that it was actually about human connection. I thought it was about mindset, but it really was about connection, connecting with humans. And And so I tried to also, you know, in my family, I tried to change it in my family. I tried to change it or like to impose it into my friends, but I couldn't because they were different. And so then when I was 18, I finally actually when I was 17, I moved out. I went to England for 6 months. And when I was 18, I finally left Germany. I was like, I can't take it anymore. I went to France. And that was like kind of relieving and it was better. And then from there, I continued my journey. But so the one thing that marked me about my journey of resilience was the lack of community. And so I was always looking for community. Even when I was at university, I joined like the student body. When I was like, I created like this, you know, I was living with like 2 other people. And even the first year when I was by myself, I literally spent only 2 days alone by myself in the apartment. Like I would have potlucks and like people like all the time. So that's kind of, I guess that's the first step. Since then, like I was always looking for community. And I was fighting the lack of having community. And in fact, I went through a bunch of times afterwards in my life where I was isolated, where I was like myself in like depression, for example. But I knew I was unsettled because I was very lonely. And I was fighting this unsettlement and I was fighting this loneliness. And so, yeah, that is like one part of why, for example, community right now is very important to me.
So, can you tell us more about where were you when you were talking about depression and isolation and settlement? Sounds like a big moment in your life. I know a few things, Guy, that you don't know. So I know about your further experiments, which I don't want to talk about too much now because I know we will get there.
Okay.
But where
curious about which ones?
Like Life is a Blast and these kind of things. So
okay.
I guess I guess going and having this sense of isolation and unsettlement brought you somewhere else as well. Like this, okay, guys, how one way of growing your resilience is actually going through difficult moments in your life and making something out of it. So, and first you mentioned resilience against something. That's not the way I see resilience. Resilience for me is a big yes. Resistance against whatever is the opposite for me of resilience. As long as you resist something, then it just goes harder and harder. Like you were saying, for example, you were isolated and you were unsettled in this isolation. Whereas, for example, I mean, I'm not talking especially from you, but taking this example of, I feel isolated. Okay, yes, and what can I do with that? Am I happy with that? No. Okay, let's do something else. I mean, this is a really easy, kind of silly example, but this is basically the first step of resilience. To say, okay, yes, this situation sucks, and yes, this situation happens. Okay, it's a yes, and it's not the end of it, it's the beginning of something else. So that's why I'm asking about the depression and so on, because I know for sure that this must have been a step in your life towards what you're, well, probably what you're doing now.
Yeah. It's interesting. Especially, I think you're actually the first person who uses the term like resilience and or that I heard of. So I love, I guess you're very right in your definition. For me, the depression was very simple. After my studies, I went on to work in the startup scene and I had like amazing opportunities. I worked at like a couple of different startups, mostly in growth marketing, and in projects that I actually really appreciated. The issue was that I spent my entire focus and my entire happiness was based on my results at work. So I would My day would basically look the following. I'll wake up, go to work until like 10 or 11, and then come back home and think about like more work ideas so that I can next day like continue working. And that just didn't help. And so 2 years later, I was, and of course it wasn't linear. So it was like, I had like down times and then a bit high and down.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a complete depression over 2 years, but I did have sometimes chunks of like 3 or 4 months. There was kind of more dark time before I was able to like snap out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I was in Paris, and it was 2 weeks before a major event that I was organizing. And I've been procrastinating or postponing kind of like the major tasks. Like I wasn't honest towards myself. I felt like I couldn't manage the tasks, so I kept on not doing them. And I woke up basically, it was like 2 weeks before the event. It was on this weekend. I thought, okay, now I'm going to do all of those tasks in this weekend. But I woke up with a big hangover because, of course, the night before, like I drank it over to like forget about like the miserable situation that I'm in.
Yeah.
And so I wake up, have a hangover, can't focus, and I just literally just like laid down in this bed and thought like, what am I doing with my life? And I just like couldn't move for 45 minutes. And I said, okay, I'm gonna run. I need to like move my body. I went outside and I couldn't run, so I just continued walking. It was like freezing degree. It was like end of November. And then I entered the cemetery. It's called Père Lachaise in Paris. It's like this big cemetery, and I enter, and there's this like big statue of a few angels coming down. And I don't know why, just like in that moment, I just like collapsed in front of the statue and like finally like cried out like all of these emotions that were just like stuck inside. So that was my breakdown. And the cool thing about this breakdown is, you know, I see it really as one of my lowest points in my life, if not the lowest point, but also the catalyst for everything that followed afterwards.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I wouldn't have gone through it, then I would have remained comfortable enough. I would have not been a 0. I wouldn't have been like -7 or -8.
Yeah.
But right now I hit the -10. So I was able to be like shaken and like slapped in the face. And I think, yeah, most of the time before that I was miserable, but change would be harder than misery.
Yeah. I call it comfortable enough.
Yes.
Like when you're not comfortable actually in your life, but like you say, change is still so scary that you're still comfortable enough so that you don't want to risk the not so great thing you have for, I don't know what can happen. But then when you hit moments like this, like you hit a wall, it's like, okay, now it's really not comfortable at all. I mean, you hit this moment where you're actually ready to take whatever risk to change this situation. So yeah, big breakdown moments are very important for that when we go through it. And that's when resilience comes in and saying yes and changing the situation.
And also when you know how to learn from them. So
yeah,
because like some people, well, that I know, like they hit the lows, go back up, but like hit them again. And for me, what I realized in that moment is that I needed to take responsibility for my own happiness. And I couldn't continue living, you know, expecting that eventually I'll be happy. That eventually when I finish this project, or when I do X, Y, Z, when I have financial income, like when I have stability, or when I meet this magical person who's finally going to teach me how to live life, that I'm going to be happy. And like I couldn't continue living this way. So so it kicked off a big journey. I first of all, that event went really well. Like the next 2 weeks I was just like very super active, like every problem turned into a solution. And then I also like raised my own self-esteem and my own desires, and I stated them. So for example, I stated like what situations need to change at work because it wasn't enjoyable and there was like way too much pressure. And eventually I decided to, you know, leave this project, which was amazing because we left in super good terms and it was very empowering. so that I could really focus on myself. And that meant that 3 months later, I was then jobless for the first time in like quite a while, which felt really cool. It was my birthday. The first day that I was jobless. I was giving up my apartment. I canceled my lease. I put all of my belongings on Le Bon Coin, which is like basically the Craigslist in France. And I was about to embark on a nomadic journey, which I didn't know where it would lead. And that was kind of exciting. It was like really cool. For the first time, I felt like alive again. I was like, that day I took a self-care date and I went like onto the streets and just like walked around and just called up people I loved and just did the things that I truly wanted. And so yeah, since then, like I went onto a nomadic journey that lasted for like 2 years. That's still ongoing. And it also went through like ups and downs, but I would generally see my life at this, this breakdown was definitely the tipping point of everything that followed afterwards, and of especially wanting to tackle life, wanting to say yes, as you say.
Yeah, I read some. So you have a few articles on Medium, and I think that's where I read about the kind of quest to hack happiness. So now I love, by the way, I love what you say about stating what you don't want and stating what you want. And again, it's the first step to resilience. It goes with the yes, it's what's happening, what's really happening. Because a lot of time we get into situations slowly, kind of by default, and we don't actually realize, we never step back to observe and notice what is really here. And as you say, so suddenly you have this day, and that day you realize, oh wow, that's not a situation I want to stay in. But it wasn't new. What was new was your view on that. And so a lot of time we need this clarity, and we don't take time in our life to make it. So I love what you said about, hey, no, now I'm going to state what I want, and I'm going to state what I don't want in my life. And it sounds like, from what I read, it sounds like this was a big step in your quest to hacking happiness.
Yes. Although the funny thing is, like that article that you saw, I wrote it beforehand. I wrote it actually like 8 months before my breakdown. So I had this little journal.
Yeah.
Yeah, which reminds me, like I've been journaling for quite a bit. But it still wasn't stable. It was a good time in my life, but it only lasted for 2 months, and then I went back into something else. I went back into like more like not taking care of myself too much. And yeah, and after that, for example, what really helped me in my journey was also being surrounded by other people who understood how to deal with those things. So for example, one of my first steps was when I became nomadic, I went to Barcelona for an event called Mind Valley University, which you know.
Yep.
And for others who don't know it, it's basically a 1 month event for personal transformation around personal growth, spirituality, and also professional growth. And so when I went there for the first time, I heard terms like self-love, which I never heard before. I didn't even know what it was. So I was doing it sometimes, consciously, unconsciously, but now I was able to put a term on it. So that really helped me help me structure myself and my thoughts and my intentions.
Yeah. And so and by the way, again, like this is I actually love this story about, okay, this was my quest to happiness. It happened before the breakdown, and then actually it only lasted for 2 months, and that's how it happens. I mean, that's why we so many times we talk about building resilience. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not a before and after thing. I mean, sometimes it is, and when it is because we had all these moments of ups and downs before, and now is the last step. But that's how we learn, right? We try something, and it works or doesn't work so well, and then we learn from that, and we go on, and we constantly evolve on that, and that's how we get somewhere. So I love that, actually. Was that Life is a Blast? When does Life is a Blast happening in that. I'm waiting for Life is a Blast for in
For
that
sure.
story.
I'm actually, just before that, I'm really curious.
Yeah.
How do you define resilience?
Oh, for me, resilience is, if you look online, you will find a lot of different definitions. So this is my definition, this is my own personal definition. And it's staying connected to life when shit happens. You know, this sensation of feeling alive?
Yeah.
Because we are all alive. We are all, and even if you're really sick, you're still alive. Your heart is beating, you're breathing, cells are doing their stuff in your body. So we are alive. But are we feeling alive? Not so much. Many people don't feel alive really in their daily life. They live like by default. So
definitely,
it's really easy, and that's what I call staying connected to life. And it's really easy to feel that when you're in Bali with beautiful people around you and doing stuff you love and so on. Yeah, then it's perfectly easy to feel alive. But then what happens when, I don't know, suddenly you're in this, well, my story, you're in this great environment. I was in Thailand, and you have a call, and your brother's dead. Well, suddenly there is something that you need to do and to find to stay connected to life, even in those dark moments. And that's what I call resilience. And that's how you can be low and get up again. And the next time something happens in your life that you would rather not experience, but it's there, you can say yes and go further. And you can actually have what we call post-traumatic growth from that with resilience. So in a nutshell, that's my take on resilience.
Cool. That makes total sense. That makes total sense. And well, I'm able to really relate to it. And actually, like, I can share with you, like, also why, especially like in regards to Life is a Blast, like this feeling of feeling alive. Actually, I'm not sure if you saw, like, so I wrote an article on exactly this, the difference between being alive and feeling alive.
No, I didn't see it.
There's this difference, like, and most people, you know, they are alive, they wake up, they get their coffee, they do their routine, or, you know, but then there's also a lot of numbness, and I was part of that. You know, I used, for example, alcohol to numb myself. I used like cigarettes, nicotine to not confront myself with my feelings. And for example, the other extreme is right now, since I got to Bali, I quit everything, including like coffee, including I had some practice of microdosing, like very occasionally, which I totally am not doing. Like, I'm taking everything out of my life that would not allow me to really feel all of the emotions or feel my pure.
Yeah.
And Life is a Blast was an initiative that I had, and it was like, I created this like a month and a half ago, and the desire was to show people how to be alive, because I was in a state, honestly, where I was looking for that. I was in Barcelona, I was running my co-living space, and I was working on my marketing agency, and I had an amazing life. Internally, I felt like something was missing, and it was joy, it was purpose, it was something higher, a greater force that I was aligned with, or that I wasn't aligned with. And so, yeah, when I created Life is a Blast, I had this desire to really just share what it means to be alive, and me feeling alive through that. And now that I came here, I realized that I have a greater purpose than that, and that I can create impact in a different way. So, so I dropped that initiative.
And it sounds like it's really relating. I mean, all of this is some kind of evolving project as I see it. And I hope you won't mind me mentioning the life engineering as well, because this is also how co-living began in your experience, right? And this comes as well from this view of how can we kind of engineer having a better life, or evolving ourselves.
Definitely. So I still am part of this group called Lifestyle Engineering, and it was created by Renat, who is one of my best friends, and he is amazing because he has this talent of just having a mindset that's very reverse engineering. So his life is reverse engineering. He thinks about what type of life do I want to have 5 years from now, and from this he concludes like what type of life he wants to have right now and like in this year, and what will be his goals and objectives, etc. And lifestyle engineering is really the mindset of engineering your life based on your intentions and your goals. So if you want, for example, to currently like work really hard, then maybe being nomadic and traveling is not the best thing. And you know, you'll engineer your lifestyle based on your goals and based on your intentions. And so when I started my nomadic journey, we went to this event called Mind Valley University. And at that time I was, you know, I didn't have savings because I never learned how to do savings by then. And I was about to go to Barcelona. I just invested $1,000 into this event, and I was looking for housing. It was like very expensive. So, you know, I called up my friend Renat, and I was still in the scarcity mindset at the time. I was like, Renat, let's get some like very shitty housing so that at least we can get like, you know, save some money. And he's like, no, why don't we see this as an opportunity and do something with it? And I've been wanting to do co-livings at that time for like almost 2.5 years. Like I wanted to do it. And then we realized, okay, why don't we do the following? We're gonna create a Facebook post in the events group, and we're just gonna post, hey, we want to live together, and how many people would be like down to do it. And we had around like 30 people commenting. And then that's how we created the first co-living space, because we realized there was demand. So we got a place, rented it out, and we called it Lifestyle Engineering House, because it was about a lot of people who were about lifestyle engineering, about lifestyle design. And yeah, and then all the other places, the other co-living spaces that we created, because Renat and I continued traveling. So we went from Barcelona to Mexico to Thailand, and then again to Barcelona. And all of those places were then the lifestyle engineering houses. It was like a nomadic co-living space, which was really cool.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. So from what I hear, it sounds like you had this experience, you had this breakdown. I love the angels in the Pelages. And then from there you try different things, but always with the goal of designing your life, of creating the life you want from that.
Yes.
And now sorry, yeah.
Yeah, definitely, yes. And even though I wasn't always intentional, but I guess the concept of intention was just brought to me more and more.
Yeah.
And including when I started my nomadic journey, it was like 4 days before I became nomadic, before I quit my job, before I left it, I had a talk with a guy called Chase. I didn't know him. Renat introduced us. He was part of the same lifestyle engineering group. So I talked to him and I told him, like, Chase, you know, I'm like, in 4 days, I'm finally quitting my job because I want freedom. And Chase looks at me and he's like, that's bullshit. I'm like, what do you mean that's bullshit? And he says, like, freedom is a vacuum. It's just something that you can fill with something meaningful. What do you want to fill your freedom with? And this is when I realized that, you know, this is the perfect example of showing I could have lived the life and just like gone on the road and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did instead was thinking, why am I doing this? What is my intention behind it? And then I realized my main intention is to be around the people that I love.
Mm.
And so my nomadic journey started with visiting literally all of the people that I've been loving and not seeing in the last like 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a sense of now I can see. It's really interesting to hear that. Now I can see how it goes into what you're doing now of creating communities. Like, yeah, now beautiful. And I have one ritual question for this podcast, and this is what makes you, and you're gonna love it. seeing what we have shared already, you're going to love this question. What makes you feel alive?
Okay, intuitive answer, love. So my intuition right now was, or like whatever came out was love, or like feeling loved or giving love is definitely one thing that makes me feel alive. And so that's why I love giving. Now, I can be loving and still not feel alive because I still can be in self-doubt and stuff, but it's also because I don't love myself. So I think that if love is there, if I love myself and if I love others and if I'm in a state of loving and empowerment, then I do feel alive. And then there's different things. Like sometimes it's randomness. I love randomness. Like
Randomness. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Like just having things that you don't expect and getting out of routine and just being in a state of mind where you're just exploring. But definitely love, people, connection is the one thing that always holds me back to life or keeps me forward.
Yeah, that's interesting because most people are, well, many people say they love surprises, but they actually are saying they love good surprises. So not so many people like randomness and unpredictability. So that's really interesting, actually. But I can totally relate to that. Like when we have something random happening and you get out of your routine, that's when you have to grow new capabilities, right? Maybe a new point of view or a new thing. And then that's when it actually gives you back who you are, because suddenly you have to define that in a new setting. Yeah, interesting.
Exactly. You can't hide anymore.
Yeah, that's it. You can't hide anymore. Yeah. So that was a great conversation. And by now, I'm sure, guys, you all want to know the following steps, which will be next week. We will talk about what Guillaume is doing right now in Bali with the co-living spaces you are developing. Before we head out, make sure you check Guillaume works on evolvecoliving.com. It's all in one word, evolvecoliving.com. And you can find him on Facebook as well. He's Meet Guy, MEETGUI. And of course, you can find the links in the show notes for this episode on the website integrallyalive.com as usual. So that's the end of this episode. Thank you, Guillaume, so much for sharing your personal story. Really enjoyed it.
And I guess, same. And I guess the key learning, just like for me, it's like, and there will be times where like we're gonna continue going through hardship and like even that curve that's going up will still have like its peaks and downs.
Yep.
But it's just, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and it's all normal to just like have those moments. And I think I'm seeing a lot of people who, for example, do not want to feel negative emotions, to kind of like bypass them. But I truly believe in the value of like growth through pain. And
completely.
And it's all about like really just like being and embracing whatever you feel.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was referring to with saying a big yes and to life, And I don't believe in negative emotions, actually. Because depending on, so for example, many people label fear or anger as negative. Yeah. Well, what can I find? Well, if a bear comes to me, it's good for me, actually. It's a survival skill to feel fear and to run off,
Definitely.
So in that situation, it's not negative at all. It's actually saving my life. Same with anger. And many people think of anger as being angry, like red, shouting, losing your mind. But I always love to take the example of Gandhi, for example, or Martin Luther King. They were angry. They were like, no, this is what's happening in my country. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to do something about it. So they were angry, but they were not acting in an angry mode. And it's totally normal to be angry when in your country you're black and you said, no, you can't stay there just because you're black. You know, so I don't believe in negative emotion. I only believe in seeing in that moment, in that situation, is this emotion serving you or not serving you? If it's not serving you, then you probably should reverse your state and feel another emotion. But for me, there is no negative emotion.
Really good. That is beautiful. Yeah.
And what you shared
is about, like, does it serve you or does it not? Yeah.
What you shared actually is what one essence of resilience is. I mean, when people think about resilience, first they think, oh, maybe I need to build it, or that's why I'm saying grow resilience, because we all have it. We're human beings. Just being alive means you have resilience. You've been sick before, you recovered. This is resilience, you know. You have your heart broken. Now you're laughing. This is resilience. So we all have it already. Sometimes we need to grow it even more. I mean, I guess there is no limit to resilience. But so this is it. This is going up and down and being okay. That's why I'm saying, you know, staying connected to life. It's being okay with the ups, being okay with the downs, knowing that these two shall pass, my friend. You know, this kind of Chinese saying. So thank you. You made a perfect ending and resuming for the topic, actually. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, Guillaume. I'm really looking forward for the next episode. I'm really curious about what you're doing now, and
same. Me too.
I know it's amazing. Thanks everyone for listening. If you like what you hear, check the website integrallyalive.com for the show notes. Leave a comment, and I love reading your feedbacks, especially now with these 2 episodes in one kind of format. I'm really curious to know what you think about it. Subscribe to the podcast and rate it on iTunes, so you will help more people get access to this information. And till next time, until then, keep sparking life and going from alive-ish to alive. Bye, à bientôt.
Bye-bye, see ya.